Hey everybody, Rob from Karma Comment Chameleon coming at you with a couple of malicious compliance stories. First one, tenant asking landlord to be more professional. Let's jump right in. I am a small-time landlord with just 4 tenants. Earlier this year, I had 2 sisters that didn't respond to my requests to add on the gal's husband to the lease, though he was living with them. Not a big deal, but did I mention the pit bull they also brought home without permission? I do allow pets, and had previously approved their other dog. I asked nicely in person and by email in the months leading up to the malicious compliance. They also did not respond when I asked if they were happy there and wanted to renew their lease for the following year. I asked again. Then I emailed them notice that I would start showing the unit 2 days later. I try to be a nice landlord, I do. They had a newborn as well, so I scheduled all of the showings within a 2-hour window on the same night so I could be in their space as little as possible. Also, because they had not responded and it was now serious crunch time for getting another tenant, and my spouse worked all the following 2 weeks during evening showing hours, I had the delightful inconvenience of bringing my 2 and 6-year-old children with me to the showings. Because I'm not a corporation, I'm a small-time family landlord with kids. Try to imagine how difficult it is to conduct business meetings with 2 kids, right? Then imagine staggering showings every 15 minutes with prospective tenants who are also bringing their own kids. Just to further clutter your imagination, this is an 800 square foot 2-bedroom apartment with a cozy entryway. So I arrive with my 2 kids to find that my tenants are still at home, along with the husband, the newborn, and the other sister's boyfriend. So that's 7 people in a small kitchen already. Then the first prospective tenants start arriving, husbands, wives, with kids, and some showing up early, so there's 2 sets of them. That's 14 people in a small kitchen. And I'm a mom. I have magical powers. So I'm holding my toddler, my daughter is safely under the dining table coloring, and I'm chatting with the prospective tenants and directing traffic while my actual tenants prepare to depart. If you didn't know this already, it's common practice in the US to leave the premises during real estate or apartment showings. This was their first apartment, so I actually emailed them ahead of time to let them know what is generally expected at showings. Example, a relatively tidy apartment, and that they can leave for their own convenience. They do eventually leave after the boyfriend tells a prospective tenant that he, in fact, also lives there. And I carry on with an exhausting scheduling of showings and have my new tenants all picked out and lease signed by the next day. Awesome, right? The next day, I get a voicemail from the husband who is not my tenant. I saved it and just listened to it again because it still gives me that same delightful shiver of malicious compliance. In his voicemail, he told me how awful it was that my children touched his infant's things. They didn't, because I keep my kids entertained with magical mummy toys. But prospective tenants also brought children, and how they had to sterilize everything to keep their infant from being sick, and how inconvenient it was to have showings with only 2 days notice, and how very unprofessional I was to bring my children, and asked if I could be more professional in the future. You can hear it, can't you? The deep shiver of malicious compliance vibrating through my offended being. The next morning, I started issuing professional lease violation notices. One for the extra residents of the unit, hubby and boyfriend, one for the extra dog, and a few additional ones for building concerns I noted during the showings. They ignored the violation notice, which I sent by certified mail, and, thoughtfully, also by email. I decided to be even more professional 30 days later and issue a 5-day notice to vacate, and I called their mom, who is their emergency contact, as an eviction notice is an emergency. Did I mention that their lease was due to end just a few weeks later? But it would be unprofessional of me to let these violations slide until then. 3 days later, they'd magically sent me all the information I'd requested, removed the other dog, licensed the first dog, gotten the required pet insurance. They moved out on their lease termination date and skipped out on their last electric bill and left the unit in damaged condition. Despite my professional security deposit, disposition statement, and request for payment, they ignored those notices until I stated I would proceed to small claims court by X date for the total due beyond their security deposit. On X date, they replied stating they didn't think it was fair that they should have to cover damages to the unit or pay any more money towards their utility bill. Yep, 2 months later, there we were in the lobby of the courthouse, sitting across from each other on uncomfortable waiting room benches. They're laughing among themselves about how they're going to get their full security deposit back, and I'm quietly reviewing my presentation notes to the judge and my sizable stack of evidence, photographs, videos. This was my first time in court, but I wasn't laughing, I was preparing. 1 hour later, we're back in the lobby and their mom is trying to write me a check for the full amount of the judgment. She doesn't have a pen. Her kids don't have a pen. I, however, have a pen. I cheerfully offer my pen. She writes the check and hands it to me, and wait, I hold out my hand again, got my pen back too. I was so proud of myself for not saying any of the sassy things in my head in that moment. You know why? Because I was being professional, as I'd been from the moment he'd left that voicemail. As a last note, I do acknowledge that it would have been better if I hadn't brought my children. However, if you have kids, you'll understand that sometimes they simply have to go where you go. I don't know why the previous tenants thought they would get away with the whole thing at the courthouse. If it says in your lease that you're going to owe that money at the end, then you're going to owe that money and there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. I'm glad OP got what they had coming to them, and I wish them the best of luck finding future tenants that won't screw them around. On to our second story. I know the rules. Do you? Let's jump right in. A little backstory. This happened years ago while I was working in retail. I had been at this place for 3 years, was cross-trained in every department, had never had a sick day, and was always able to cover shifts when they called me. The important thing to say is that we were also unionized. I would soon be getting married and moving across the country, so being the good employee I was, I gave my store manager my termination notice a month before my last day instead of just 2 weeks, so he would have plenty of time to hire someone new. Here is the good part. A few days after I turned in my notice, I broke my foot in an act of stupidity. 3 avulsion fractures, they couldn't cast it. Doctor gave me some pain meds and a note saying I could continue to work as a cashier as long as I had a stool or something so I could keep the weight off my foot. The next day, I grabbed my cane and walked to work with my note. I explained the situation to my supervisor and union rep, and they pull a bar stool from the furniture section and put it in my cash booth. I spend the day working without a problem. The next day, my store manager sees me sitting on the stool and calls me into his office. I go in, and he wants to know why I have this stool. The conversation goes roughly as follows. "Why are you sitting down while on shift?" "Because I broke my foot and the doctor says I cannot be standing on it all day. I have the note and the union's approval." Manager looks over the note and notices the cane beside my chair. "I can't let you keep the stool. If I did, we would have to make accommodations for everyone who got injured outside of working hours. Plus, it doesn't look professional to have you sitting at the front of the store." Now, I know he isn't allowed to do that, and I could have taken this up with the union and won the case, but with only 3 weeks left with the company, I would be lucky to have it resolved before I left. So I get a bright idea. Okay, I will make you a deal. Instead of bringing this to the union, I will give up the stool, but in return, you need to make sure that every shift I work from now on is as the garden center cashier. My manager quickly agrees and thanks me for being understanding. He walks with me out to the garden center and explains to the current cashier that I will be taking over for the rest of the month. Now, being unionized is not always a great thing, but if you know the rules, you can get away with a lot without being fired. With my union, the key was to do exactly what was in your job description, so long as it didn't put you, your coworkers, or the company at risk. Since most of us liked our jobs and respected the store's owner, not the manager, we always went above and beyond. But I was on my way out, and after my talk with manager, I no longer cared. A few days later, manager comes out to let the supervisor know that a shipment of flowers will be arriving sometime today. He apparently decided to check up on me and was completely speechless when he saw me. There I was, sitting on my register's counter, reading a book. What on earth are you doing? Waiting for the next customer to come up while taking the weight off my foot. Why? You know I could fire you for doing this, right? My job is to be a cashier, which I am doing whenever someone comes up. There are no additional duties like cleaning or stocking for the garden center cashier. So between customers, I am taking the weight off my foot as per my doctor's note, minus the stool of course. I could still fire you for reading on the sales floor. Please do. Since I have never received a warning or been written up, that would mean you were firing me for a first offense, which is not sufficient cause for the union. That would mean you would owe me 5 weeks severance, my unclaimed vacation time, and the pay I would miss between now and my final day. Now, you could also spend the next 2 weeks trying to catch me reading. That way, you could issue me the required 3 warnings, followed by the required 3 write-ups, but that would eat up a lot of your time, and I'm pretty sure I could have someone inside call to warn me if they see you coming this way. At this point, a man with a cart full of bags and dirt starts heading my way, and I hop off the register and onto my good foot and hop around the register so I can serve him. Manager never came to see me again. OP already had a foot out the door, and it kind of makes you wonder why OP didn't just let the manager fire them and then come back at them and get a whole bunch of extra money and a little bit of time off out of the whole situation. I want to thank both of the OPs for posting their stories to the Malicious Compliance subreddit. You can visit them at the links in the description below. Please go there and give them an upvote. Once again, this is Rob from Karma Comic Chameleon saying thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.